Hey guys, it's Dr. Masterson. Welcome back to the Provider Autonomy podcast. We believe that no matter what you are in healthcare, that could be a doctor, a nurse, pharmacist, whatever the provider that you are, you're the best leader for your patients. So we want to equip you to be that leader. I'm joined today on the podcast by Coach Brent, football coach at the University of Northern Alabama.
Good to be here.
Hey man, it is so good to have you here. So tell us a little bit about your story, how you got into football coaching, what brought you to Alabama, and give us the 411, give us the background.
I'm going to try to sum up the last 15 years of my life in 1 or 2 minutes here.
I'm here for it.
I'm a son of a high school football coach. My dad was a 44-year offensive line coach. And I go back to that all the time. That position is the most selfless position in all the sports, probably.
Wow.
You never get your name in the paper. If you don't work in unison, you don't work with the guy beside you, the people that play behind you are usually not as successful. So you have to be part of a team. You have to be understanding that you're not going to get the recognition. So I grew up in a household of an O-line coaching father. Also grew up in the Deep South. My dad was high school football coach 6 days out of the week, and then served as a deacon in my Assembly of God church, my Pentecostal church growing up. So I grew up in the church in the South, and I thought I wanted to be a radiologist.
Wow. Okay.
Because I was chasing money.
There we go.
So my first year and a half of college, I had tons of science classes, and I realized about biology too, or that physics class I had, that science wasn't for me. So I don't think the Lord's sending me down this radiology path after all. So ended up feeling the Lord calling me, and I got a math degree, taught high school math for 5 years.
Awesome.
And I used it as a platform to get into coaching.
Yeah.
And the Lord's taken me all over the place from 5 years in high school, landed me at Auburn. My first 2 years in college coaching was 2013 and 2014 at Auburn, which was the kick six season. It was my first year in college football, so that was pretty fun. And my relationship with Coach Malzahn at Auburn helped me get an offensive coordinator job in D2 in Arkansas. And then I've been at Bethel as the head coach, to OC at Kansas, OC at FAU and Middle Tennessee State. And I just got tired of traveling and moving my family, uprooting my family. I wanted to get back in the state of Alabama, plant roots in a place that I feel great about raising my kids.
Right.
And when this job opened up, I went hard after it. And there's nothing like being the boss, and you get to set your schedule, and you get to determine when you can pick up and go see your kids and go catch their flag football games or their cheer events. And I don't have to ask anybody's permission anymore. That's one great thing.
That's so true. It's all on you, though.
Absolutely.
The buck stops with you, too.
Absolutely. There's a little bit more stress wearing this hat, but there's other things that I don't ask for permission to go for it on fourth down anymore from anybody. I just speak to myself, I guess, on the sideline.
You have to answer for it, but you don't have to ask for permission.
Absolutely.
You said something that really spoke to me in the beginning there, where, your dad was working a job that was very selfless. And I know when I look at my own life, I look at like the way I practice, the way I lead people, a lot of it's influenced by my parents, the way they led me. So I just want to hear a little bit more about that. Like, what ways did your dad kind of speak to you to, first of all, make that statement as the first thing about your life? And then how does that play out in your current leadership style?
I tell my coaches this story all the time. I think I'm like 10, 11 years old, and my dad, a high school football coach, has to wear so many hats, as some in the room understand and know, from painting lines on the field to cutting the grass to taping ankles to teaching class and turning in lesson plans. There's so many, to fundraising, worrying about the plate sale you got on Saturday. There's so many hats that a high school football coach has to wear. And I remember at 10, 11 years old, I was up at the school one Sunday afternoon after church, and my dad's cutting grass, and I take my ball up there and just play around while Dad cuts grass. And we take the Kubota tractor back to the garage and park it, and he grabs this tool that I'd never seen before as a 10-year-old, and he starts doing something with the back of the tractor. I said, "Dad, what is that?" And he said, "It's a grease gun." I said, "Well, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm greasing the wheels." So why do you do that? He said, "Because if I don't do it, who will?" You got to grease the squeaky wheel. And that was the first real lesson that I got to learn from my dad, of understanding it ain't about me. It's not about my what I want to do. It's about the betterment of the whole program. It's about the betterment of the whole workforce. It's about the betterment of the whole business. And I put my needs aside I put the others above me. And growing up in the South as a believer, I think Jesus taught us how to be a servant, and my dad, with his faith, kind of taught me the same thing.
Yeah. It's a beautiful picture. You get to carry that into the career that you choose for yourself, even if it looked like it was going to be medicine at first, but then it switched. It's still people, right? It's still people at the center of your mission, which I love. So as you start to move through all the different opportunities you had in coaching and player development and team development, what were some more of those influences in your early career, later career, things you saw you liked, and things you were like, that's a good lesson of what not to do?
I'll tell you what, when I took the offense coordinator job at Arkansas Tech, I'm driving from Auburn, Alabama to Russellville, Arkansas on some back road, highway roads, and I downloaded John Gordon's Soup, and I listened to Soup on the way to Russellville, Arkansas, and I broke the law, I guarantee you, because if I found a great point, I spoke it into my notes, and I had my phone out while driving. I don't advise that to anybody, but the notes that I took listening to that book ended up shaping the culture over the next 3 seasons that I would do at Arkansas Tech, from our mission statement to how we interact with our players to how I interact with my staff, all came from that John Gordon book. And John Gordon was probably one of the top influencers in my life for about 3 or 4 years, with Soup being the first book, but then I took a deep dive into the Energy Bus, then got into Carpenter, and then I don't think there's a John Gordon book that I didn't read over that 3-year stretch. And so I would say John Gordon was one of the first, and then I try to read 1 or 2 books every year on culture, leadership development, legacy. The story of the All Blacks was another book that we went through, and now I've gotten to the point where me and my staff pick a book together.
Love that.
And we do a kind of a study together through a book. And but going back to the initial question, John Gordon was probably the biggest influence. He doesn't even know this. I met him when I was the OC at FAU. He came and spoke to our team. Wow. And I went up to him. I said, "You have no idea
what you've done,
the influence you've had on my life." And I guarantee me being a person that's got influence on people, to hear other people's stories sometimes fuels your bus.
Right. Have you had any of your players come back yet and be like, man, the things I learned about mission, vision, culture, values, I use that in my life now?
Absolutely. I've got a former quarterback of mine that went into coaching that I actually speak to about once every 2 or 3 weeks, and he's an offensive coordinator, and he reaches out to me or asks me football questions a lot, and over the last month he started asking more, hey, why did you do this off the field? Why did we have this mission statement? And to see that I've made that much of an influence on him off the field is kind of touched me a little bit. That's the reason why we do what we do.
Absolutely. I think what I really like about what you're saying is that, regardless of the profession that you choose, if you're, not a computer programmer sitting in a basement by yourself, then you're working with people. And if you're leading people, regardless of the line of work that you're in, they all are looking for the same essential elements. And the things that a lot of times I see in healthcare, probably even maybe very similar to football or in athletics in general, trying to give people a mission, trying to give people a North Star can be very obvious to some. So here's what we hear in healthcare, like your mission should be to make people feel better, right? Like just heal the patient. Whereas you just win football games, right? Like, why do you need to have a mission statement? But walk me through kind of those early years when you were, absolutely grab a drink. Actually, no, give me that drink. How you have to, because in healthcare, there's this big cultural hurdle that you have to get over, which is, hey, we're going to be different, and we're going to be different not just in our care, not just in our excellence or our winning percentage, but we're going to be different in the way we do it. And here's why. So what hurdles did you have to overcome when you're first like, you know what, this Gordon guy's right. I need to craft a mission statement, and then getting the team to adopt that.
I think everybody in I bet in the medical field, everybody in the football field, you don't play against a staff that doesn't know what they're doing.
Right.
There's not a college football staff out there that is just clueless. So you got to understand what's going to separate you. And it kind of takes me back to our team's motto this year is 212. And probably 10, 15 years ago, I read a little small book called 212, 1 degree makes a difference.
Yeah.
And the whole point behind it is at 211 degrees, water is hot. But there's no real action to that water. But 1 degree of difference is now creating boiling water. And boiling water can create steam, and steam can power a locomotive. And we've had some great examples here recently where at the early part of the summer, I think Martinsville race in NASCAR was decided by .001 second, or .006, 600ths of a second. I think one of either the Preakness, the Kentucky Derby, something like that, was decided by a head of a horse. And every field is given their best.
Yeah.
But what's going to be what's different about you?
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's something that you guys are doing in your side of things in the medical field, is trying to say what's going to separate us from the office down the street, what's going to separate me from the college football team down the road, or the one on our schedule. So trying to find those little things that make our guys excited to come to work every day, because we're all going to do work, but it's about the energy and the effort and the attitude that you do the work.
Yeah, I wonder if it's similar in football. When I first sat down with my staff, the team of people that I had, when I said, hey, we're gonna have a mission statement, we're gonna have some values, we're gonna do vision casting, I'm gonna evaluate you on the core values that we have as a group, and we're gonna talk about culture, and we're gonna talk about not necessarily like performance all the time, but we're gonna talk about your attitude too. And if I talk to another physician about that, and I say, this is really what sets us apart. Yes, we have to do excellent healthcare. Yes, we have to cure disease. Yes, we have to make the right diagnosis and write the right antibiotics. But this also pays more dividends than that. A lot of times the looks I get are like, I don't do all that mushy stuff. Like I treat the patient, right? Do you sense that in football as well? Like, hey, we're here to win games.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've gotten players over the last year that when you come in, you try to change something. And you inherit a staff where you don't get to recruit the staff in. That's probably where in football you come into the biggest button of heads, is taking players that someone else brought in. And in year 2, year 3, we've got to recruit those players. We've got to hire those staff members that we know is going to come in and have the energy, the contagious energy that you want to fill your building with. Where sometimes you got to constantly have that conversation with a free safety that may not be the most energetic person in the world, but he's a talented football player, and we got to figure out how we can get him to the level that we want. I tell you what's really helped us. I'll give you a quick example of something we're doing this summer, and I don't know if you could do it in the office, but maybe you can.
We'll figure it out.
I've seen you guys with the attire you wear. So this summer we gave all of our players a blank white T-shirt and passed out Sharpies in a team meeting room. And on the back of the shirt, we asked them, what is your why? What is your purpose? And I want you to write that there. And then that way it forces everybody in that office, everybody on the team, they get to see why you do what you do every single day.
Wow.
They get to see your why statement. And then all of our why statements are going to lead to our whole mission statement. But it helps me as a coach to understand why they show up to work every day, why they do what they do. And then on the front of the shirt, they wrote down 4 characteristics they want to be known by.
Wow.
Grit, toughness, reliable, leader, all these things that I'm learning about. And I saw some guys write things on there. I was like, there's no way that he would have ever said that. But what it forces other teammates to do, or it helps us bosses out sometimes, is the team members see it, and they hold each other accountable more for what they wrote on that shirt. Instead of me having to say, hey, you didn't bring any energy today. If you say you want to be known as an energy guy, well, the guy you work out with every day is now going to start calling you out on it.
How long did it take him to fill those out?
We had a team meeting one Sunday night, and we gave them a heads up before they went home for break and said, hey, I want y'all to think about this. And it was probably two and a half weeks that they had time to think about it. And then when we showed back up, it probably took 20, 25 minutes for us to do it.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, one of the most important things we do in onboarding is really kind of saying, like, what purpose does this serve for you? You know, are you here to get a paycheck? Are you here to grow? Why why even be a nurse? Why even be a provider? Why even be a biller? Why even be a front desk person? Because if we can understand your motivation for being here, then we can do our best to kind of equip you to live a flourishing life. Because if I'm accomplishing a goal that I feel like is making me move my own mission forward, then collectively we're going to have the best success.
Absolutely.
At our own
That's
missions.
awesome.
So give me a little bit of perspective on the other kind of leadership influences that you've had since Gordon. Like what other, not necessarily authors, but like individuals that you've met in your tenure in your career.
Oh man, there's so many, and I hope nobody listens that I may forget.
Yeah.
But when I was at Auburn, of course, I learned so much on the field from Coach Malzahn. He's an offensive genius, but I worked directly under a guy named Tim Horton, and Tim Horton was the running back coach at Auburn, and he cared about people. Wow. When Tim Horton came into work every day, he wrote 10 letters. Every single day, hand-wrote letters, and nobody does that hardly anymore. Right. And what he did is he wrote 3 letters to high school football coaches. He wrote 3 letters to recruits. He wrote 2 letters to former players of his, and he wrote 2 letters to parents. Wow. Like he was intentional with how he served and cared about people, and I probably learned more about caring for people from him than probably anybody else. Here recently, I've done 2 guys here recently that is fresh on my mind. I've started listening to Craig Groeschel's podcast, and classic. Man, I've learned a ton in the last couple of months from listening to his podcast. And then a big mental health, mental performance guy is Brian Kane. Is an old strength coach buddy of mine from Auburn got me on Brian Kane a couple months ago, and just deep diving into dealing with athletes mentally and what they go through. Yeah. I'd say those are the first 3 people that come to mind.
Yeah, awesome. You know, you asked me at the beginning of this kind of like what my influences are. And I remember graduating from residency, which is the training that you do after medical school, and having this notion of, oh man, like I know what leadership is. Like I was like this president of this council, so I'm good. And I had 2 months of break, really, between end of residency and when this job started. Somebody gave me a book by Patrick Lencioni. Have you heard Patrick Lencioni before?
Absolutely.
I read it, and I think by the 2nd chapter, I realized, wow, I know nothing about leadership at all. But I've honestly just been so enthralled by all that helping people on both sides of the coin. People would say, why'd you want to become a physician? I said, well, I wanted to help people. But honestly, almost more fulfilling and more rewarding than doing what I feel like is the primary objective of a physician is connecting with employees and seeing them flourish and seeing them thrive. And so I think that we have a similar mindset in that, and not only just like winning football games, which is obviously very, very important, but also connecting with players for the long term to kind of like see them flourish. And like honestly, what you said earlier, where people come back to you and say, hey man, the mission that we developed on that, or my why, like I didn't even think about that until that moment.
Absolutely. And it's also nice when you enjoy going to work.
Yeah, you know, that's like, always a plus.
When you love going to the office, you love who you work with, then it fills the office with joy.
Yeah.
And absolutely. I bet you would agree with this. Joy is a pretty good medicine.
Yeah, it is one that is honestly, the most powerful. So obviously we've talked a lot about like how you're leading your team, what principles you're putting in place, and the success you're seeing. What are some of the principles you're applying to your own life? How do you lead yourself, and what's the importance you put on that? You know,
there's a big 3 that I probably hang over my head. My number one thing is kind of my mission. Comes from Genesis 1:28, where God tells us to be fruitful, and it's going exactly what me and you were talking about. He said, "Be fruitful, multiply, and conquer the earth." And the number one thing is for us as bosses, as fathers of our home, is to be fruitful and to be. It's hard to pour from an empty cup. I heard that statement one time. Yeah. And it's my job to constantly keep myself fresh and keep listening to podcasts, be around people that's going to pour into me so that I can pour into the people around me. So number one is I got to have an elite mindset. Instead of seeing things like they are, you got to see things for what they're going to be. And one of the illustrations we give to our team is I bring in an acorn and I show them that acorn and just ask them, what is this? And of course, all my country kids go, oh, that's an acorn, coach. I say, no, this is an oak tree.
Right.
It's all in how you view it, and it's my job to view things that 17, 18-year-old freshman that's coming in, that I've got to get him to a level that he can go out and play against grown men. Yeah. Well, when he comes in, he's not ready to do that. But I've got to see him in what he's going to be.
Right.
Because if I treat him as he is, he's going to stay as he is.
Absolutely.
But if I treat him as what I think he will be, then he's more likely to become that. So that's the number one thing is having an elite mindset. The second is like what we talked about earlier is constantly understand my purpose. And sometimes we got to remind ourselves of our purpose. And that's one of the things why I said we wrote it on our shirts this summer. I wrote mine too. I got my own T-shirt, and my mission or my why statement was to be significant. Because for so long I viewed life as how can I be successful? And success was based off money, things, where significance is based off of impact.
Exactly.
So I want to see how can I impact people. And so elite mindset, elite and understanding my purpose is the biggest two things for me.
Yeah, that's so great. I love that acorn story because it reminds me of a statement that one of my mentors once told me. When you see, except it was a seed, like when you see a seed, you know what it's going to be. You as a leader have to be really intentional of seeing it what it could be, but also not getting mad at it and really frustrated with it for being a seed. I used to have this conversation with interns. So intern is the first year after medical school when you're like that brand new doctor right out of the gate and like you got somebody dying in front of you trying to make a decision. Ask for help and live in the grace of being in your first year. Live in the grace of understanding like I need to ask for help. I need to communicate vulnerability.
Absolutely. That's so good.
Yeah, which leads me to my next question. How do you create, I can't honestly imagine a more masculine, intimidating environment than a college football team, maybe another football team of some kind. But how do you inspire a culture of vulnerability and like saying like, hey, like I need help with this play or I need help with this system. Help me coach with this.
Man, it's tough because of the stress that at the end of the day, the outside world thinks it's just about winning.
Right.
And the stress of, I've heard so many times, an old coach of mine used to tell me that he had an old coach of his that said, you've practiced this play 10 times. Why haven't you got it yet? And he said his head coach came to him and said, what's the significance in 10?
Wow. And
he stopped for a second and said, what do you mean? He said, why do you think just 10 times is what works? If he didn't get it, then it's 11 times. If he didn't get it then, it's 12 times. Yeah. And you have the patience, and that's tough for us. I'm going to be honest with you. I coach our quarterbacks, and that's probably the position that is the hardest, in my mind, it's the hardest position in all the sports. Yeah. Because if you make a mistake, everybody knows you made a mistake.
Yeah.
If a right guard makes a mistake, you probably have to go back and watch the replays a couple times to figure that out. So it's the most scrutinized position in all the sports, but it's also a position that's held at a high level. You kind of look for natural born leaders to play that position. Absolutely. There's a lot of military services that actually recruit college quarterbacks because of what their minds are like. But I'm pretty hard on those guys, and I've had to sit down and look in the mirror myself and kind of, all right, now listen, I know that they threw the wrong pass into this look, or they didn't make the right check in this situation, and then I have to stop and think, well, we only practiced that twice.
Sure.
And we're such perfectionists when it comes to being on the field. I don't think us college coaches do a great job of having grace, and that's something that I bet you a lot of us would tell you that's not the greatest trait in college football, probably.
I bet. So, given that, give me a little preview of what you're most looking forward to for the upcoming season.
We brought in a lot of new guys, either with freshmen coming in or with our transfers that we've been able to get. We've got 10 FBS. That means the division above us have transferred down to us. We've got 10 guys that from an FBS level, and we're one of the 12 programs in all of FCS football that have that many.
Wow.
So we're really excited about some of these transfers that we've been able to get. You know, a local guy named Jackson Bratton from Muscle Shoals was a 4-star coming out of high school, but just wanted to come back home and wanted to play in front of his home crowd. And he's one of our 4 guys that is on a couple NFL draft boards for this upcoming season. But every single day right now in the weight room, we do some kind of testing on the field of running. Maybe a 10-yard sprint, maybe a 40-yard dash, maybe a 5-10-5 shuttle. But there's something we test every single player in our program every day. And then we go in the weight room and we test something with jumping, with their vertical jump, with a 4-jump test, with a standing or approach jump. And we post our top 5 list every day by position. And every day there has been 2 to 3 true freshmen on that top list. 5 list. And it just gets us excited about the future.
Yeah.
Where sometimes we focus on the now.
Yeah, what potential that is.
But we see great potential in a lot of these young 17, 18-year-olds that we've been able to bring in. So I'm excited about what this season's got, but I'm also so excited about building this young group over the next few years.
It's going to be exciting to watch.
Absolutely.
Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. It's been really, I love to hear the perspective of how people lead, because we're all in the same business, encouraging and developing people.
Absolutely.
Whatever that looks like. I hope you come back someday and talk to us again.
Would love to.
After the season. That's going to do it for us here at Provider Autonomy. Thanks for joining us. We believe that you guys, the providers, are the best leaders for your patients. See you next time.